That's our new recruiting videos we're going to be using for our police and fire departments. Just wanted to preview those to you tonight as we get into our presentation. This community is founded, based, solidified, anchored by these two departments. As I say all the time, we don't have a community without a good public safety. It all builds from there. They're our foundation. And so as you hear Katie and I present tonight, keep in mind that it all starts with our public safety, and everything builds upon that. So this slide we're going to start out with is what we want to show you is our local tax dollar allocations. Everywhere our tax dollars go based on the service. This is just all the functions that our city services include to provide services for 75,000 residents over 42 square miles with 500 plus full-time employees, half of which again are made up of our police and fire departments. This slide here is something you all asked us to do starting back in January 19th at the retreat, is to educate the public on how we use a tax dollar. And this is just a $1 bill that we slice up into cents. And as you see, 49 cents goes to public safety, 17 cents on average goes to public works, 14 to Parks and Rec, 13 cents to general government, and then the 7 cents goes to Neighborhood and Community Services Department. We have tried very hard to provide good services for a long time, but there is a cost to doing business. As you know, every service offered to the community has a cost, and that cost has increased over time. To maintain physical sustainability for the future, we've got to find a way to continue to provide those services at the lowest appropriate and possible cost that we can. We've got to keep investing in infrastructure, and we've got to keep improving quality of life here in Bowling Green. So, at the 1/19/23 BOC retreat, we went over the strategic plan, and under one of those pillars is the efficient governance pillar. And under that pillar, one of the actions states, examine projected revenues and projected expenditures to determine if revenue growth at the current rate will adequately support the delivery of future demands on city services, and thoroughly examine the impact of various revenue scenarios on the city's finances. A second piece of that was to develop a robust 10-year financial and development strategy in support of economic development expansion. So, to fulfill that, those two actions in the strategic plan, my staff, department heads, senior management, we got together, and we asked our department heads to look out 5 and 10 years into the future and to tell us, what do you think your department is going to need in the next 5 to 10 years to meet the demands and to provide the services to upwards of 90,000 people that we are expecting to be at by the year 2032. So based on what those reports showed, to continue the successes we've experienced the last 10 to 15 years, continue providing the same services to a growing city, we have realized that there are going to be greater financial needs. And to continue with fiscal sustainability means we need to be able and willing to generate the necessary inflows of resources that are necessary to honor our current service commitments and to meet the financial obligations of the city that come due, whether that be debt service, whether that be payroll, whatever that might be, agency allocations, you name it. The list goes on and on. Revenue growth by varying options is a vital component of managing physical integrity of the city's budget. The city's been fortunate, though, to deliver these means without raising taxes since 2003. So this is a pretty good track record that we've been able to sustain, but we just don't think we can do it indefinitely. Anticipating the impacts of the next 10 to 20 years with the community growth and the prosperity requires foresight in making decisions today that support fundamental obligations of the city into the future. I'd like for someone to give me the name of a business or organization that has not raised their prices in the last 20 years. I could not think of any. That is our current situation. We have been living with the same tax rate now since 2003. We haven't raised a rate since 2003. We had a 1.5 in 2003 that we raised to 2%. Shortly after that, in 2007, we decided that's too high. We need to lower it. We lowered it to 1.85%. We've been at that 1.85% now for 15 years. During that 15 years, we've had a recession. We've had ups and downs with the economy. We have issued bonds for a trans park. We have issued bonds for a ballpark. We have issued numerous debt obligations to keep things running here. We built a fire station during that time with some debt, and we've done all we feel we can with the 1.85%. We are a growing city. People say, "Well, don't you have enough growth, to manage that?" And the occupational tax is one of the most volatile income taxes or taxes there are, because we saw what happened with the recession back in 2008 to 2011. We took a dip. We saw what happened during COVID when businesses were closing. We took a dip in the revenues. So it's very volatile. And so looking ahead, looking at our needs with public safety, we need more officers. We need more firemen, firefighters. We're getting ready to add Station 8. We need more people everywhere to just cover what we're doing now. And people say, well, have you ever considered looking at cuts? Have we made any cuts? Are there any areas we can be leaner at? Of course, there always is, and we look at that every year during budget. But since 2008, when the occupational license fee or license tax was reduced from 2% to 1.85%, we had the Great Recession impacting revenue generation from 2008 to 12, as I mentioned. This forced us to reduce expenditures, and we did that. We even laid off people during that time. It was hard, but we had to do it. With personnel as a large expenditure, we've been trying to reorganize any chance we get when people retire. We've combined positions. Katie's position was a combination. My old position long ago was a combined position. We've done it over and over. And between 2006 and 2020, we removed 34 full-time positions and 70 part-time positions from the budget. And we managed to compound savings of about $15 million during that period between 2006 and 2020. So we have made cuts, and we made them over and over again. Other reductions we've made, reduced operating budgets by nearly $5.4 million over a 3-year period by just putting off capital needs, maintenance to buildings and parks. And we've seen that. We've been trying to catch that up over the last couple of years as we can. Employee development was reduced. We cut training to the bone. We cut travel for a year or two for people to get certifications. Put that on hold. We cut out coffee, food at meetings, memberships, association memberships for a couple years to get by. From 2009 to 2019. We were able to refinance 11 debt issuances, and we saved $7.3 million over a span of time that will span us through 2038. And so all the refinancing, we captured better interest rates. Capital projects and purchases, as I mentioned, were deferred to later years. And we even cut, CIP, capital improvement projects for several years in the general fund back in '08 through FY10 and FY11. Those were some lean years. In FY08, we went to zero in capital on the general fund. FY11, we were only at $564,000 in capital from the general fund. And then again, when COVID hit, we reduced it to $1.2 million in FY21. So we have made cuts, and we've done the best job I think we could have over the last 15 years with the 1.85%. I'm going to hand this off now to Katie, and Katie's going to talk about inflation and what we're facing in various categories as far as cost increases and inflation. Katie.
Good afternoon. Again, referring back to our January 19 work session where we started to talk about this issue, you had all kind of indicated, well, show us some proof, give us some examples. So this is strictly the general fund, and this is taking from 2013, fiscal year 2013 to fiscal year 22. This is information that is currently contained in our audit, so you can go back and find these numbers again, and you can see that every single one of our service areas have increased in cost. Parks and Recreation, the increase seen there is probably primarily due to golf and aquatics being moved under Parks and Recreation from an enterprise fund now under general fund. That took place in 2015, but it has also increased above that. And then agency services, that seems like a gigantic increase, 451%. It's a little misleading, but I do want to point out that all of the agencies we currently fund, there are 10 eligible agencies that receive funding currently. Prior to 2018, those agency funding were incorporated in some of these other service areas. So as an example, the Planning Commission used to be considered under our general government, and airport and transit services were previously considered under Public Works. The Hobson House and Operation Pride were previously considered under Parks and Recreation, and then our Economic Development Authority funding was previously included under Neighborhood and Community Services. So in 2018, we actually decided to ungroup those items from all these other service areas and put them under their own service area. So that's why you see 451% increase from 2013 to 2022. But as mentioned, regardless of that increase, all of those categories were previously under the other categories, but they are still reflecting increases, even though funding had been removed from there. So the area shown in gray is the city limits of Bowling Green, and just since 2003, we've grown by 16.1%. And obviously, this is the area that is patrolled by police, serviced by 7, soon to be 8 fire stations, and maintained by Public Works. And they have to go from one end of the city all the way to the other end of the city. A lot of our facility locations are strategically located within the city, but there are still empty miles going from one place to the next when they have to travel. So we want to point that out as well. And then the decennial census population, Jeff mentioned previously, we went back to 1950, and all of the decennial census populations all the way to 2020. The growth rate on that is approximately 2.2% year over year for the city of Bowling Green. And if we considered that moving into the future, by 2030, we would be probably near 90,000 people. The 2022 estimate is not yet out, but the 2021 census estimate for population is 73,529. And already, with this population growth in just the last few years, the last 10 years, if you will, we've already experienced a much greater demand for services such as public transit, affordable housing, improved roadways, and then interconnectivity from sidewalks and greenways to expand our infrastructure within neighborhoods, get them to commercial, retail locations within the city. All of those items also come with pretty big price tags. So again, wanted to provide you some very specific examples. So we picked out a few of our commodities, and in just 1 to 2 years to just 6 months, these are reflective increases that our budget has experienced. So the de-icer is just a 1-year change. So from FY22 to FY23, it's up 45.05 cents per ton. So that's an increase of over 47.7%. I'm not going to talk about all of these, but obviously concrete and asphalt, 2 other main categories that we spend money on. And so our 2023 bid for concrete was up to $51,151 over the prior year. So that's 93% increase in just 1 year. Paying for asphalt, the per ton cost there increased by $57.36 in just 1 year. So from FY22 to FY23, an 85% increase. And obviously, the more these 2 categories cost, the less that the city can actually do to for resurfacing, repaving of streets, and or building or repairing sidewalks and curb and gutter and all of those things. A few more commodity options. Just tonight, you approved the bid on pool chemicals. That's up over $24,500 from the prior year. Fertilizer is up over $11,400, and that actually goes back to FY21, so it's 21 to 22 comparison. We're expecting that cost for 23 to go up even more. That bid, I think, has come in, but we haven't yet had that. Did we take that before the board? Not yet. So that hasn't come before the board yet on fertilizer. So we are anticipating a larger increase for FY23. Patrol vehicles, one of our more vital pieces of equipment that we have for public safety. Again, this is just the 1 year 22 to 23 increase, but if we go back to FY21, we're over $10,400 more per vehicle. We purchase 12 to 15 vehicles per year. And that's not including the upfitting that's involved with all those vehicles. So even those costs have increased. And then, of course, we've got turnout gear, which is another important tool for our fire department. Utilities, this is only a 6-month change. So when we compare the FY22 first 6 months of the fiscal year to the FY23 first 6 months of this fiscal year, it's up 10%. On top of that, the utilities tend to want to charge us for fuel. And so there's a fuel adjustment rate, which is up 92.8% since 2020. Now I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the services that the city provides. So our vehicles and equipment are serviced by our fleet division, and the amount of equipment that they are now servicing is up 77.5%. So we went from 316 vehicles in FY23, vehicles and equipment, to 561. So we have added, obviously, to our fleet. This allows us to provide services more efficiently, more effectively, but obviously all of this equipment must be maintained on an annual basis and periodic replacement. An important piece to me, business registrations, because that brings in our revenues. This has also gone up pretty considerably, and in comparison to our population growth is very similar in that growth rate of around 24% for the population. We're at 25.9% for new business registrations in the last 10 years. And then also for our HR department, internally job applications being processed. So we are still receiving applications, although maybe not as many as we used to for several of our positions, but they still have to be, all of those have to be processed. We very specifically wanted to look at the 911 service calls over the past 10 years, so those are up nearly 20% from 2013 to 22. But then also I wanted to kind of reflect more of what the police department does. So we provided you with a couple graphics here that show the calendar year 2022 activity by certain categories of the police department, and then very specifically kind of honing in on traffic citations, because that's important obviously to our community, and making sure that we're keeping speeds down in areas and not running red lights and disregarding stop signs, that type of thing. So I wanted to point that out. Obviously, there's a whole 50% of that pie that's a lot of different traffic citations, but we wanted to identify those. And then for fiscal year 2022, we had a total number of police calls. So this is not just 911, but calls for service that come in. 911, however, takes up 46% of that number. So nearly half of that 160,000 is 911 calls. Again, looking at some of our key services that impact economic development, residential development, our building and electrical and code compliance inspections are up 64%. So over 7,800 additional inspections are taking place in that 10-year period. And then building permits, again, impacting the ability for developers out there to quickly move on projects, get construction started, get projects done. That's up 102%. The number of sidewalk miles that we maintain by the Public Works Department. So we have a new sidewalk program. So we're adding sidewalks every year, but not just that, we're also accepting new subdivisions within our sidewalk maintenance. And so that is up over 113% in just those 10 years. And then the soccer fields maintained. We decided to expand our soccer field complement by adding to the premier grounds at Preston Miller. So that's 8 additional soccer fields that we added in 10 years, in addition to the Lovers Lane location and the Foundry, which is not currently in play, but we're looking at some ideas there to replace it. Now to our other very important area in public safety. Fire accident runs are up 17%. Fire investigations are up nearly 90% in the 10-year period. But we also wanted to point out some very positives. The fact that our fire department can respond 90% of the time in 6 minutes and 31 seconds saves property value. And so we identified, the fire department put this information together for 2022. We've saved over $211 million in property value because of the fire department's ability to respond quickly and get fires out, take care of what needs to be taken care of in a short amount of time. And of course, we have the additional fire station coming at the Trans Park that will hopefully just add to the ability to continue this saving property value for people out there that are impacted by the worst day they've probably ever experienced. And then we're able to at least save them some of their value. We also wanted to look at benchmarking with other cities, similar to Bowling Green. And you can see here that we chose some very specific financial indicators that we could look at, and we did them based on per capita, so based on our population, to try and equalize this information as much as possible, and very specifically looking at their general funds compared to our general fund. So general fund expenditures per capita shows that Owensboro operated with the lowest general fund cost in FY22, but Bowling Green was only $48 behind that. So we were right there in that category. I think that shows that we really are making every effort to provide our services at the lowest appropriate cost possible. And Jeff just pointed out we are half their land area because they are landlocked by the Ohio River. General fund revenues per capita show that Bowling Green is kind of in the middle of the group. And then Bowling Green has the lowest outstanding debt per capita. And obviously we have been able to do that by not financing and paying cash as much as possible using general fund operating revenues each year. We're not having to tap into fund balance very often. We pre-save for a lot of our capital projects. We've been doing that pretty consistently since 2009. And so this metric really is, I think, reflective to how Bowling Green is also the largest city among this group. Our population at almost 73,000 is significantly more than each of these other communities. Covington comes in the closest at about 40,000. So again, and Owensboro obviously is a little over the 55,000 mark, but these are our neighboring communities, and so they're good references for us to look at. Jeff mentioned that we are in need of additional positions, and we did talk to you about a 10-year staffing plan at the January 19th work session that we had. So this is just really looking at the next 5 years. And over that next 5 years, we have 70 full-time positions in police and fire that we would need to add to our budget. And over the past 20 years, we have actually increased police and fire by 101 full-time positions. Where we had previously eliminated non-public safety positions, we have consistently added public safety positions to our complement. But again, looking ahead, we're looking at approximately 70 full-time positions between police and fire. And obviously for fire, one of the biggest things is the Trans Park Fire Station and getting that staffed up to where it needs to be. And then also looking at their national NFPA 1710 standards, where we have enough people per truck to meet those 2 in and 2 out safety requirements that are out there. And again, another piece of perspective here, these costs that are identified up here are based on the proposed FY24 wages, fringe, benefits, the upfitting costs and ongoing costs that are associated with those positions. So obviously over $110,000 per sworn position, depending on whether it's fire or police. Police obviously also has the addition of a patrol vehicle. Fire trucks are not any less expensive, but we buy one and it serves the entire station, so we don't have to have them per person, per position. And we do have the take-home fleet for the police department. So those vehicles are assigned per person. They don't hot seat those vehicles, meaning they don't share those vehicles with anyone else on any other shift. That is that officer's vehicle. We do that, again, to get the vehicles out within the community and to provide that community awareness that the police department is out there and supporting our city. What you see in the blue boxes, again, are considered the national averages, particularly for police. They want 2.4 positions per 1,000 in the population. Currently, Bowling Green is at 1.8 positions per 1,000 in the community. And for fire trucks, again, the NFPA standard for 1710 is four firefighters per truck. And right now, we're at 3-1, where we have 8 stations and that have 3-1, and we have 10 trucks. Now, there are a couple crews at some of those stations, so there's more than one crew at some of those stations, which helps to make this work. But when we send out a crew, we have to send out 2 trucks to make sure we have the standard of the 2 in and 2 out covered. So again, behind the industry standards, which are based on population and safety protocols. Now I want to look at the non-public safety positions. Again, this information was presented to you in a 10-year staffing plan. And as Jeff had previously mentioned, we have eliminated 34 full-time positions. We've been fortunate to be able to add just a handful of those back, primarily in Public Works. He mentioned we had to lay off some positions. We've been able to bring those positions back. And several other positions ended up being reorganized or recategorized to reduce costs associated with them when we were able to bring them back. But we've not been able to recapture all of the lost positions, and there is a growing need to address areas which have fallen below standards. One example, which is kind of forefront right now in dealing with new subdivision development inspections, we're just not able to adequately do those inspections to make sure that before the city takes over the maintenance of these new subdivisions, that everything is built to our standard, because we don't have the manpower to be on site the entire time they're laying all of the pipes and doing all of the construction underground, that once it's done, we can't see. So we have found some of our developments probably weren't constructed to the standard they need to be, and so now our Public Works Department is having to deal with making repairs, fixing situations that shouldn't have been that way to begin with. So when you're thinking about the first year cost of all these additional positions, in addition to a COLA, in addition to our STEP program, and in addition to making pay adjustments for police and fire to help with recruitment and retention, we're looking at $9.4 million in first year cost. That's if we approved all of these positions for that first year. Personnel costs compound, they're ongoing, annual, every year. So it's important that we have sustainable growth, particularly in our occupational fee, because we like to look at our largest revenue source to cover our largest expenditure, and that's the occupational fee, and that's personnel costs. So when you're looking at both of those two categories, just to produce $1 million of new revenue takes 1.6% growth in the occupational revenues. That's based on our FY22 actual collections. So if you think about $9 million, we would need to have a growth rate of nearly 14.5% in our occupational fee to cover that $9 million and have that growth rate continue to cover all of the compounding costs of that, in addition to covering additional personnel in the future. In the past 20 years, going back to FY 2003, when we did increase the occupational fee, there were only 2 years in which our growth rate exceeded 15%. That was fiscal year 2004 and fiscal year 2005. Since that time, there have only been 2 years beyond those 2 years that were actually double-digit growth. So that was FY 2017 and just last year in FY 22. In 10 years of the last 20, our revenue growth came in less than 5%. And in a few years during the recession, it was negative. Now, obviously, the city is going to continue to seek grant funding utilizing the COPS grant program for police officers and the SAFER grant program for firefighters. And in fact, I think we will be having an application for submission for SAFER to help assist in the cost of 15 new firefighters over a 3-year period, coming to you probably next meeting. But as we experienced this last year, those grants are not a guarantee. We applied for the COPS grant last year for 4 positions, and we applied for 8 positions under the SAFER grant. We were not awarded either one of those last year. So there is no guarantee that we can get that funding, yet we still have a need for the additional staffing, which remains the same. Now, if we were to subtract the new positions and just look at COLA, the step increase, and the pay adjustments for police and fire, that number is $5.2 million for fiscal year 2024. So again, if we don't approve all of the positions and we rely on getting the grant funding, you have already given your preliminary consensus to provide the COLA at 6.5%, a step increase, and then doing these pay adjustments for both police and fire in this next year. And I am going to turn it back over to Jeff.
We're almost finished. So this shows you how critical withholdings and net profits our occupational tax is. At 67.7% of our general fund budget. Property taxes come in at 18%. You've got grants up there at 6.6. Insurance premium taxes are about 3. Everything else is about 5%. So this revenue is significant. It's all we have in Kentucky. You can't have a local sales tax option in Kentucky. It just doesn't exist. So you either live on property taxes or you live on occupational taxes, and that's basically what we've tried to do since the beginning of time. There's no other choices. So so what we've done here is we've looked at other cities and rates. I think we showed you this at the retreat on January 19th. There are 34 other cities currently with a higher occupational tax rate than Bowling Green right now. And you see some little cities up there, Dareville with just under 1,000 people with a 2% occupational tax rate. I mean, not making fun of it at Dareville at all, but you know, I mean, just look at the population and look at some of the tax rates that are tied to those cities up there, and then we're the 3rd largest city in the state, yet we're at 1.85%. So consider that. This next chart here is if we were to get you all to approve a 2% rate reset back to what we had in 2007, we think that would generate about $5 million in additional revenue per year. Something we haven't mentioned is if we go back to 2003 and we calculate the change in the tax rate, actually 2007, since 2007 when we lowered the rate, we've given back roughly $54 million to the taxpayers in occupational tax rate change. $54 million over the last 15 years that we've done without, and that's okay. It went back into the pockets of the taxpayers. So what we've done here is we've calculated what the effect would be on a 0.15% increase. And as you can see, the first one there is the $19,760. That represents the state minimum wage at $9.50 an hour. The $31,200 represents a $15 per hour wage rate, hourly rate. And then the Bowling Green median household income is the $43,633. And so you're looking at $2.52 per paycheck on 26 paychecks a year biweekly. for that one, and then you can see what it does to $50,000, $75,000, and $100,000 salary ranges. In contrast to the occupational tax, if we were to monkey with the property tax, raising the property tax by an additional flat fee of, say, $75 would only generate $1.7 million compared to $5 million. And that would only impact 23,000 property owners, many of whom are senior citizens on fixed income. And so we think the occupational tax is the most fair tax there is. It's all relevant to what your gross wages represent. So moving forward, other needs we've mentioned are public transit. We do get a lot of money from the feds and the state, but we do put some of our own money in there. Economic development. In the last couple years, we've issued since '03, we've issued $25 million for the Transpark. We issued $26 million for the ballpark, which kick-started downtown. We recently did another $46 million GO that we're splitting with the county on the Transpark for infrastructure. We split a $12 million property purchase with the county for economic development that landed in Vision in the Transpark that we split with the county. So we use tax dollars that we've invested in economic development, and it shows. It's why we're the way we are today. We're also going to continue to have to improve roads, sidewalks, greenways, parks, workforce recruitment. We've got that going on. Riverfront Park, we're going to have to use a lot of our own money if we're going to pull off that project, which we're very, very excited about. We're getting really close to naming a design firm for that. We have come to a realization that our stormwater pipe system is not very good. We're getting ready to have to tear up College Street. It had a huge blockage in it, which was causing flooding right here on the corner of 10th and College. We're getting ready to have to fix that. There's no telling what else is out there underneath in the old pipes underneath the streets for stormwater that we might run into. Just programs like summer camps, that will need to be expanded as we get more people. Service level enhancements all across the board. As you could see, the correlation between 911 calls was very, very close to what our population growth was. You could see what the fire runs were with medical runs, very correlated to what our population growth was, and on and on. So looking ahead, if no action is taken, city will continue to operate, but we'll just have to understand that the future outlook is not as certain as it could be. Doing nothing potentially means several things: risking fewer park amenities, after-school programs, less programming, our aging infrastructure with streets, sidewalks, stormwater, playgrounds, reducing service levels, public safety response times, longer waits at Brent's shop to get plan review, building permits, electric permits, ABC licenses, business licensing. The list is on, and I know you guys are getting worn out, but let me close with this. We don't want to go backwards. We don't want broken swing sets on the playgrounds. We don't want weeds growing up along the side of the road. We want nice roads to drive on so we don't wear out our tires. When we have an emergency, we want our police and fire to respond promptly. What we're asking for tonight, it's not for me, it's not for Katie, it's for the good of this city going forward. It's for the future mayor, it's for the future commissioners, it's for the next city manager, it's for the next CFO, it's for the next department heads. It's for the future employees to be able to operate and do their jobs well. Going back to 2% as we had 15 years ago, you ask, why now? Why now? We're doing okay. We're growing. Well, I can't sit here and do my job and bury my head in the sand and pretend nothing's going to change, because it's already changing. It's already out there. It's coming. You know the jobs that are coming. You know the people are coming to fill those jobs. Why now? Now is the perfect time to get ahead of it. The state withholding rate dropped 0.5% back January 1 of this year. They went from 5% to 4.5%. Take-home pay went up, right? That drops another 0.5% this coming January 1 of 24. We go from 4.5% to 4% on a state withholding tax. Again, more take-home pay for everybody in their pockets. All we're asking for is a 0.15% adjustment in our city occupational rate. That gets easily absorbed with the state withholding rate reduction of the 1% that they're going to be doing. We need this to sustain us for years and decades to come. It's the responsible thing to do for our successors. I really feel that way. If you were to agree to put this on an upcoming agenda, we would likely implement it January 1 of 24 to time it out with the state's next reduction for withholding taxes. On the net profit side, we would make it effective for tax years beginning after December 31st of 2023. So the first adjustment for net profit tax wouldn't fall until the following April for businesses that have a year ending in December. April of 25 would be the first impact we would see on the net profit side of the 0.15% adjustment. So I'll leave it at that. We want to put this on the table. I feel like it's my responsibility, Katie's responsibility, to show you a glimpse of what we think is out there on the horizon the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you for listening to us for the last 30, 45 minutes. We just wanted to follow this up from what you all requested from the January 19th agenda retreat, and are here to answer any questions you might have. We've got some department heads in the room as well. Thank you very much.
I'm going to start, Jeff. So if I understand you're asking us to put this on a future agenda with the implementation date of 1 January 24, so it'd be that after that fiscal year, people are paying their taxes, that they would see this 0.15% of a penny increase, correct?
Yes, sir. It'd be January 24 paychecks.
And effectively, they've already have increased 50 cents, or excuse me, $1 of their state withholding has come back to them.
They've gotten 0.5% back already this year, and they'll get another 0.5% back starting January of this coming next year.
Well, with that, there's a great amount of information that is that we're just absorbing, and what I'm seeing is that there's timing that we can, we're in February of 2023, you have the commissioners here for the mayor for the next 2 years, but we're not, it gives us time to be able to go out and communicate to our community to let them understand, the decisions we're making and why we're making the decisions. Since I've been mayor, we've been down from 19 police officers, I think it was a little bit higher for a peak, to 12 police officers today. I mean, we do not have 12 police officers, commissioners, that are out there patrolling our streets, acting to these recalls, taking care of our community. And we already know that we're below the standard. And so this to me is hitting home, because that is what our government does well, that what our government has done very great in our community, but we are not giving our police officers enough manpower to be able to do their job effectively today. I know we talked about at the retreat to bring Officer R, which is, I know the chief's been working hard to implement, and Officer R is to bring some retirees that have worked on our police department, and they would be contract employees under the city to be able to help us out in our workforce. So I know we were all for that in the commission. We stated, please go forth and please do that. So what I am stating is that these things concern me. We're a growing community. I wholeheartedly concur that, we need 3 new fire stations, one of them, in the Trans Park now, next on the Porter Pike, and then a new fire station that is our city's growing that we've already identified. Our road improvements, people complain about it, but unless we do something about it and be proactive and spend more of our dollars towards solving these community issues, they're not going to go away. They're going to become more difficult in the future and more pricey to accomplish. And the third thing I'll state is that, sidewalks and greenways, these are issues that are near and dear to making our community vibrant. I mean, these are why people are coming here to work. And then, as I have understand occupational taxes, we have put incentives to bring companies here. It takes us, from what I now wholeheartedly understand, it takes us up to 30 years to be able to get that 1.85% or 2 cents on a dollar that people pay in that occupational tax. We're, the jobs are coming, but we're not receiving the benefits fast enough to keep up the government that's needed to sustain the businesses. So these are decisions that I don't enjoy making. I'm a conservative. I try to keep our government conservative. No one wants, I think, whether you're conservative or not, nobody wants to take more out of their pocket to pay taxes. I mean, we all have felt the pinch of the economy, the inflation, and I know that this is something that none of us have all stated that we're willing yet, but we're listening, and we asked you to present this to us, and so I say thank you. This is great information. I need time to be able to get this information out and communicate, where I'm standing. And I think I'm stating that I'm in favor. I am stating I'm in favor, but I need the time to be able to communicate this wholeheartedly to the community. And I see you giving us that window to be able to get this right by 1 January 2024.
We would need about 8 to 9 months to roll this out internally, because we've done it before. We've done it twice before, and a lot of tax form changes, a lot of notifications, a lot of advertising, ADP, payroll processing company, all these payroll processing companies that have our forms and rates locked into their systems. It takes a while to get the word out and get the battleship turned a little bit.
So I know you'd like to have an answer,
So
as soon as possible.
I'm not trying to rush you, but it does.
What's a reliable window that you would need to be able to implement this by 1 January 2024?
I want to defer to Katie, our CFO.
Ideally, it would help us to know in April, but we certainly can make it work with just a 6-month time period. So if we knew by June, that I think we could make that work. But 6 to 8 months is really what it takes, and you wouldn't think so because it's changing a number. But as Jeff mentioned, there are a lot of payroll service companies, tax companies out there, accountants. All of these businesses in town, everyone would need to be notified about this change. All of our forms are also submitted to the state. The state has those forms on their website. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes updates that we would need to do, make sure that everyone is fully informed, be able to answer questions, and help people to understand. So my outside time frame would be June.
Thank you. Done. Commissioners.
I would just like to thank you too. You delivered what we asked for during the retreat. You painted a picture of what our city could look like, what it's been looking like, what it's going to look like going forward. I'll be honest, it's a picture I wish we didn't have to see, but it's reality. So thank you so much for taking the time to put this into a presentation for us. Hope a lot of our citizens have watched it, and if not, that they'll go back and watch what's taking place in the city of Bowling Green. So thank you all so much.
Is this a presentation that we could put on our website and then, have citizens contact with any questions? So they might be able to, it's much better when you have you all telling us what each slide means and rather than just a citizen reading it, but we could also, field questions and concerns with. I'll reiterate what Melinda said. Thank you all. This was a really informative presentation and well done, and at least something to digest. And Jeff, you're right. I don't know of any business that hasn't raised their prices or their wages or anything else during this recent last couple of years that we've experienced, and we took a blow. This is a blow. Inflation is definitely, it hurts everybody.
I also want to thank you all for presenting this situation to us and our community. I definitely concur with the mayor that I know none of us ran for office planning to raise taxes, and right, we're here to be representatives of the community and to make the hard decisions that are making the best decisions we can to help making sure that we are making good financial decisions that are going to improve quality of life. And so I want to ask our community, our citizens, this is going to be a shared sacrifice that all of us make if this adjustment goes into place. And so I do encourage citizens, if they haven't watched the presentation tonight, I would encourage them to go online and watch it afterwards, look at the slides. I want to hear from our citizens. Is this something that you also believe is a hard decision, but something that collectively we are willing to do together to make sure that, when the worst thing happens, we know that our police and fire are going to be there on time when we need them, that we are going to continue to have the infrastructure that helps us get to work on time and to be able to, our deliveries to get to our small businesses and to have a thriving economy. Is this a sacrifice and investment we're all willing to make together? And so I want to ask the citizens to please let us know that. We are representatives of you all, and so we need to hear from you about, after you learn this information, what are the questions that you have, and what are you looking for to see of our city in this moment, with the reality that faces us of the revenues coming in and the expenses that are on the horizon. What is the wisdom that you want to bring to the table for this moment? Because that's how we're going to make the best decision, is when we come to this moment together. And so I just want to thank you all for making that available. And I was just curious if we could, I know you all do this for things in the past where you record yourself going through the presentation, and I wasn't sure if we could possibly provide that, or if it's a way to just narrow this meeting to this just one portion of it to provide.
I feel fairly confident that Raina can just take the work session piece from this meeting video, and separate that out and have a separate link just for that presentation, so you don't have to watch the entire meeting before the work session.
That would be great.
So if you could provide that to us as soon as you can, and then I guess an attachment as well of the slides themselves, so that when we hear from folks, we can share that and make sure that we're getting all the wisdom in the room to make the best decision we can.
And for me, I want to ditto everything, but one of the questions that I have, I know that we talked about some of it goes to affordable housing, and I would like to know what percentage of that actually goes to affordable housing. Another thing that I would like to know is the stalled growth. I do believe that for businesses, they do raise, but we also seen the state government has lowered taxes as well. Like everyone else, I'm not one that wants to raise taxes, but I want to make sure that we have all the information available. We do know that we're getting those Envision jobs here, and there's thousands of jobs that's going to basically be opening up here. So my question, and kind of learning for myself and also for the public, because we're getting money from the occupational tax, does any of those jobs being filled, not the businesses, because we know we're giving them a 30-year rate, something that's going to mitigate whatever they have to pay on taxes. But those employers, or those employees, are still going to have to pay the occupational tax. Does that alleviate any of the budget concerns that we have? Because if it does, I don't know, even if it's at 75% or 80%, if it does alleviate it, should we be raising it, by 1.5%? And Katie, I would really appreciate you, because you answered questions that I reached out to you. Because right now, if you're paying $25,000, and stop me if I'm wrong, please, and it's at the current rate of 1.85%, you're paying basically about $462.50 per year. So it doesn't go up that much, but if it goes up and we're raising it a little bit for the entire year, someone who's paying $25,000 is actually going to be paying about $500 per year. That's how much it gets raised. And I think that's where everyone needs to know, because that makes the dollars real. And it lets them know, okay, this $75 actually helps out. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. If you're getting paid $50,000 per year, under the current rate, you're paying annually about $925 per year. So if it's raised, and biweekly, by the way, it's like 35.58 cents on a biweekly thing. On a year, instead of $925, if there is a raise, or if we're going to raise these taxes, you're going to be paying about $1,000 per year. If it's $100,000, and you're going to be paying about $1,850 per year. If it's raised, you're going to be paying about $2,000 per year. So the reason why I asked about if those jobs that we have coming, and we do know that they're coming, and it may not be within the next 2 years, but if it alleviates some of those budget concerns, should we be raising it right now? And kind of like what Commissioner Beasley Brown said, I definitely want to hear from the public. This is on you guys. At this time, we need to hear from you so desperately, because we know that inflation has impacted lives. But we also want to make sure that we have our fire department, our police department, that are there, are going to be answering the call. The mayor mentioned basically that it was 19, since we've been here, about 19 police officers that were not there, and now it's 12 police officers that we're down. And I need to know even for myself, are those 12 police officers because we're still trying to recruit them and hire them, or is it because we can't pay them? Because those are two different things, because if we can't pay them, we definitely need to try to make sure we mitigate and get them paid, because we're a growing city, and we want to make sure that, like the mayor has said, Commissioner Beasley Brown has said, I think Commissioner Hill has said, that they come to our doors. These are all concerns that I have before I can agree to even raising the tax rate. But I work for you guys, and I want to hear from you.
Mayor.
Well, so you've given us some work and homework, and I agree that we do need to talk to the public, but, as public officials, in the end, we're going to have to make a tough call on what you think is the right thing to do. And again, I revealed my cards a little bit, because I'm going to continue to tell the story that Jeff Meisel, our city manager, Katie, did such a great job in articulating. I'm going to take that to the public, and I'm going to tell people that story. And so I would appreciate, city commissioners, if you would help us do that, because our city manager has come to us with hat in hand. He's asking us to do what he believes is the right thing, and I have a lot of faith in Jeff Meisel, his team, and I know that this is a big ask, and I know that they're asking people to carry on that big ask, and that's us. So this is a leadership role that we have to work at. And so you're right, we do need to go out to the public, but we also need to tell that story and try to get the public to understand the decision that we think is at hand. And so I revealed my cards, because I'm trying to show that leadership too.
And I understand that, because I felt like that was directed towards me. So I do understand that, but the thing that we always have to make sure is that we all should be asking questions. We all should basically be like, what is the bottom line and how can we make sure that this city works? I do agree that they're the experts, but at the end of the day, we work for the people. So for me, telling those stories is very important. And I appreciate Katie, and I definitely appreciate Jeff Meisel for being here saying the things that we need. But I also need to hear from the public. As a leader and a public official, that's what we're here for, is to hear from you guys.
Could I address just a couple of things that Commissioner Bailey had brought up? So in terms of affordable housing, currently there is no direct general fund support for affordable housing. That is all through the Community Development Block Grant Program and through HUD and any other grants that we can receive. The only general fund that currently supports our neighborhood reinvestment program is on average about $200,000 a year, and that's part of our capital program. So that very specifically in terms of affordable housing, we are not putting that money from general fund into it. So with this increase, with all of the additional jobs we're hoping to come, that is what could help support more money toward affordable housing. In terms of police, certainly I don't want to speak for the chief, but I know that he is in the process. We're doing recruitments twice a year. We're in the second recruitment for this fiscal year to be able to fill the vacancies that we have. And with the new police retiree BGPD officer program, I think he's aiming at up to 5 positions to be filled pretty quickly of those 12. And then the rest of those would be filled with this next class, hopefully. But they're going to be doing 2 recruit classes a year. So we will continually be trying to keep positions filled. And it's not that we don't have money in the budget, because we do have the money for those 12 positions. They're just currently vacant right now, so that's going into savings at the end of the year until they're filled, because we budget for an entire year for all of the complement that we have within the within city staff. And then if those positions become vacant or it takes a little time to get them filled, then we capture that savings at the end of the year. And that's part of what we put toward future capital. It's not completely, but it's a portion of. And then I believe the other question, you were correct in terms of representing the increase and the actual annual costs associated with those salaries. The one benefit, obviously, with the occupational fee is that the less you are paid wages, the less you pay in the occupational fee. So it does impact everyone, but it is spread across the entire workforce that's within the city limits. And therefore, again, the less you make, the less you pay. That's why we wanted to provide you with several examples, very specifically looking at the ones that Jeff identified in terms of the hourly rate that's the Kentucky state minimum, and then also, you know, the medium household income. We wanted to make sure you had that very specific information, because that is obviously an impact to everyone that would be participating in that. So the hope is, with all of the new positions, all of the new jobs that are coming our way, that will allow us to continue and increase those services, because obviously that's also going to draw more population. It's going to draw more need for services, more people coming in and out of the community and wanting to access our infrastructure and utilize our facilities. So it doesn't alleviate the need. Those positions will help deliver what we need to make the commitment to deliver, but also all of those jobs bring all of that additional population and that much more in terms of service that we need to support. So it does help, but it isn't everything. And then, as Jeff mentioned, it's so volatile. You know, today we have a fantastic outlook for new jobs, but we're also hearing about some companies here in town that are reducing their workforce currently. So all of those factors have to be taken into consideration, and I know that this is a very difficult decision for you. So we want to bring you the facts. So if you have any other questions that you would like us to respond and provide information on, please don't hesitate to reach out. We will certainly provide you with that information that you can then have available to when you're talking to the rest of your constituents.
So one question I do get is, why isn't our growth and the revenue we're getting from that growth keeping up with our expensive? Why doesn't it match? And if you can provide something that we can share with the community beyond, because maybe some folks don't have the 30 minutes, 45 minutes to watch the whole presentation, but if there's one piece that we can best visualize and describe that gap that you are mentioning as to why we're even having this conversation, that would be helpful, because that's most of the questions I've received or comments have been, the growth is going to take care of it.
Can I make one more comment about that? Mm-hmm. So I think the chief would back me up on this, but, we talk about tourism, everyone that comes to town. We love tourism events. We love everybody that comes to Beach Bend and all these things all summer long. Who knows how many will come to the Duncan Hines, but we don't get $1 from a visit from a tourist. We don't get any sales tax money from them. We don't get any of the room tax money. Yet we may have 100 to 125,000 people in town any given day, and we have to service traffic accidents. We have traffic congestion. And so we don't get revenue from everybody coming here just to visit. We only get revenue from people that come here to work. And that's fair, because they're using our services. If they get involved in a traffic accident to and from work, then we're gonna help them. We're gonna take care of them. So just keep that in mind, that our tax structure in Kentucky is so limited. Any tourism we get through here, it's great. We're going to be really a big tourism town. We're not getting to keep any of that money. It all goes back to the state, or it all goes back to Conventions Visitors Bureau, which is fine. That's how they operate. The only other thing I'll say, and I'll be quiet, is we're in a crunch globally labor market. Okay, so when we hire someone, we're competing against the private sector. A new person comes on today, Aaron, they don't get the pension that people used to get. They get what's called some kind of hybrid. We don't match it because we're having to pay the retirement system for past sins. And so all they're stuck with is something they're putting money into. We're not matching it. They could go out in the private sector and get a 401k match and make better money, have a better retirement 401k system, and that's what we're competing against. And so when we come up to you during budget time with these salary increases and COLAs, that's for us to maintain and compete and retain employees here for the city of Bowling Green and be able to continue to do what we do. Because if we don't, they're going to leave us. It's been proven. Mike loses people all the time. Public Works loses people all the time to the private sector because of higher wages. All these jobs we hire every meeting, half of them are because people have left us for higher wages. We have to compete. If we don't compete, we might as well give it up. I mean, that's the point we're at with the labor market. This 7% COLA, this 6% COLA, it's going to continue. I'm reading articles all over the place until 2040 or better is when we might recuperate and recover from the retirements of the baby boomers. That's the situation we're in. That's the environment we're competing in going forward. And that's why we need to make sure we're in the right place, okay? We're a service organization. You saw the numbers, 60 to 65% of our budget is for payroll.
All right, thank you, Mr. Meisel. Thank you for this presentation. No further questions? All right, Ms. Jackson's